Hello again. Before we go on, there's just time to mention that our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Bouillon and Harry Breur. It's performed by Jean-Jacques Perret, who's kindly given his permission for us to use it. It always amuses me that it took 3 people to write it and 1 person to play it, but anyway. I'm sure there's a logical explanation, but here's Elizabeth with the first item of sport.
This is hockey. Southgate took over at the top of the men's conference east of the English Hockey League on Saturday after recording a 3-1 victory at home to previous leaders Richmond. Simeon Bird broke the deadlock for the hosts on 13 minutes with the only goal of the first half, and Jonty Robinson doubled their advantage 10 minutes into the second period. Charlie Ellison gave Richmond hope by pulling 1 back with 15 minutes left, but Tommy Smythe ensured that Southgate would claim the vital win by adding a third 6 minutes later as they went a point clear at the top. Meanwhile, Southgate ladies maintained their fine form by easing to a 3-1 victory over Havant in Division 1 of the South League on Saturday.
And now football. Enfield Town got back to winning ways in the Ryman Premier Division by easing to a 3-0 victory at Leatherhead on Saturday. All the goals came in the first half, with Bobby Devine scoring twice and Corey Whiteley also on target as Town bounced back from successive league defeats in fine style. Cockfosters made a disappointing return to action on Saturday as they were beaten 3-0 at home by high-flying Hoddesdon Town in the Spartan Premier Division. The poor weather meant that Cockfosters had only played twice since the turn of the year prior to this match, and there were clear signs of rustiness in their performance. Meanwhile, Enfield 1893 came from behind to secure a 2-1 victory at home to Greenhouse London on Saturday and climb above them in the Essex Senior League table. The under-11s football team from St John's School continued their highly impressive season by being crowned Middlesex County champions over the weekend. The youngsters from the Enfield School took on teams from Harrow's West Lodge School and Brent's John Keel School in a tightly contested round-robin competition in which all the games ended in draws. St John's Prep School now go on to represent Middlesex in the South East of England regional final of the English Schools Football Association Cup. The first time an independent school from the county has had this honour.
Now rugby. Saracens showed real resilience on Sunday as a severely depleted side came from behind to claim a 14-11 victory at second-placed Exeter and consolidate their position at the top of the Aviva Premiership. Sarries were without 7 players on international duty, while Chris Ashton was missing through suspension and other key men were unavailable through injury. And it looked like the absentees would be sorely missed when the visitors, who were playing into a strong wind in the first half, fell 11-0 behind courtesy of James Short's intercept try and 2 Gareth Steenson penalties. But Samu Vunisa crucially grabbed a try on the stroke of the interval to get Sarries on the scoreboard, and they controlled the game in the second half, with Charlie Hodgson kicking 3 penalties to give them a win, which saw them move 5 points clear at the top of the table. Enfield Ignatians under-18s were crowned champions of Rugby Union's Hertfordshire Middlesex League Division 4 over the weekend, after scheduled opponents Royston pulled out of the match. Royston's concession of the fixture meant that Ignatians were awarded a 45-0 win by default, to ensure that they rounded off the campaign with a 100% record. Meanwhile, Ignatians' senior side bowed out of the Intermediate Cup on Saturday, with a 27-7 defeat at the hands of Fullerians in the third round of the competition. The architects of the girls' team at Enfield Ignatians Rugby Club are confident that the youngsters will continue to go from strength to strength. The side, known as the Enfield Tigers, were formed at Easter last year as part of the youth section of the club, and Steve and Sinead Corcoran, whose daughters are committed squad members, have big plans for the team. Steve Corcoran said, "I remember when we were playing Harrow, and one of the reactions by some of the spectators is, 'Oh look, there's a girls' team.' They seemed to attract their fair share of onlookers, no doubt spurred on by the curiosity factor. Despite a tough start, the side have successfully progressed and have more than held their own against mixed teams from Cheshunt, Harrow, Chess Valley, Old Grammarians, Datchworth, Saracens, Chingford and Barnet Elizabethans.
In the wake of a series of sex attacks in the east of the borough, a council chief has pledged a raft of measures to help women in the borough feel safer. 2 weeks ago, a woman was attacked in Mottingham Road by 4 young men, and just days later, 2 12-year-old girls were pounced on by an attacker in 2 Edmonton streets yards away. One managed to escape, but the second girl was subjected to an attack. A man has been charged in relation to the incidents involving the girls. The attacks came in the same week that police launched an appeal for help in tracing a man who'd sexually assaulted 12-year-old girls on buses running through the borough in December. Jessamine Brett, Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Community Safety, said she was in no doubt that the recent budget cuts to policing, services and council budgets hit women hardest. I'm looking into every measure we can do to help women feel safer, and one of those things is council-run self-defence classes for girls and young women, she told the Advertiser. Don't get me wrong, women are strong, women are not victims, but at the moment women need such things that would help them feel safer, such as better street lighting. In 2012, the council slashed the lighting budget, and while Mrs. Brett would not be drawn on whether the authority would reinstate full funding for street lighting, she insisted all of these issues have been brought up in all of our budget meetings. One of the issues that alarms her is the fact that she's been told by police that in Enfield they're aware of 20 sex offenders who are currently of no fixed abode, making it harder for officers to trace their movements. And with the introduction of Secretary of State for Justice Michael Gove's rehabilitation revolution, with more offenders being placed in the community for rehabilitation, Mrs. Brett fears that the problems may escalate. This scheme means that they're going to place more offenders in the community, and they're expecting councils to manage this, she said. But the issue is, if you're going to put the offenders into the community, then you should be finding them housing. They say they give targeted rehabilitation to offenders. But if that's the case, why are there 20 sex offenders in the borough with no fixed abode? The government don't even tell us how many offenders are housed in halfway hostels in the borough. Mrs. Brett adds that with the cuts, the Met Police's ability to tackle the problems caused by rehoused offenders will be greatly reduced. The police have had drastic cuts, and they're expected to have more drastic cuts, she added. The current budgets are only up to March 2016. We were supposed to have 561 officers specifically for Enfield. That was scaled down to 557. And the number of police officers that we have now is 537, meaning that we're light by 20 officers. Police cannot be in 20 places at once. As well as putting forward the idea of a council-sponsored self-defence classes, she's hoping to bring back the community help points, places in the borough such as shops and businesses where young people can seek refuge if they ever feel unsafe. I want to reassure people that we're working closely with the police and are doing everything we can to help our people feel safe, she said.
An ongoing fight over who's responsible for flooded gardens has left neighbours feeling abandoned. Problems began after woodland was destroyed during the development of the former Middlesex University campus at Cat Hill, leading to drainage problems for householders living in Vernon Crescent, Cat Hill. Kim Coleman, who's lived in Cat Hill for 60 years, said the developers L&Q said they were being good neighbours and advised us to go to Affinity, our water company, as it was their responsibility. Affinity say it's L&Q's problem and they have 3 weeks to sort it out. Meanwhile, people's gardens are still being flooded and it's a race against time. It's a nightmare. Ever since the planning application in 2014, there have been people passing the buck. We warned that allowing so many trees to be cut down would lead to flooding, but no one took any notice. There are gardens with a foot of water in them. We just feel like nobody cares." In an email to Ms. Coleman, Affinity Water said, "The developers are under a 3-week timescale to get the drainage issue repaired." However, L&Q said, "An Affinity Water technician has visited the site and confirmed there is not an issue with clean water. We have since clarified with them that a wastewater notice has not been issued, though an earlier communication did indicate, in error, that one would be served."
A swoop by immigration officers on an Edmonton factory led to the arrest of 13 men. The raid on the premises of Sweet Mahal Limited in Rivermead Road was carried out on the 28th of January by Home Office officials and Enfield Council. It followed information that many of the workforce were in the UK illegally and that the factory was also being used as their living quarters. Officers arrested 12 Pakistani men and an Afghan national, all aged between 24 and 61, on various offences relating to their immigration status, including entering the country illegally and overstaying or working in breach of their visa conditions. 9 of the Pakistani men and the Afghan national are now at an immigration detention centre facing deportation, while the remaining 3 men have been ordered to report to the Home Office regularly while their immigration status is investigated. The owners of the business have been warned they face court action and a potential £260,000 fine, £20,000 per illegal worker, unless they can demonstrate the appropriate right-to-work checks were carried out, such as seeing a passport or Home Office documents confirming their permission to work. Assistant Director David Seymour Smith, head of the North London Immigration Enforcement Team, said, "This was a large, meticulously planned operation. We rely on information from the public, and I would urge people to report suspected immigration abuse to us." Daniel Anderson, the Council's Cabinet Member for Environment, added, "We're determined to take action against the small number of businesses in our borough which don't play by the rules."
Abandoned clothes belonging to a man who has been missing for nearly a month have been discovered in central London. Obi Cheap Khan, 29, from Palmer's Green, who previously used the name Ekbal Obi Khan, has not been seen since January 12th. Police believe he travelled to the Lambeth area, where items owned by Mr. Khan have been found close to Lambeth Bridge. Among the abandoned clothes was a long black trench coat, which detectives believe he was wearing at the time he went missing. Mr. Khan is about 5'2" and muscular, with a short black hair and beard. Anyone with information is asked to contact Enfield Police via the number 101.
Mysteries surrounds the resignation of 2 of the most senior figures who worked for an Enfield charity helping the elderly. Former Chief Executive of Age UK Enfield, Tony Seagroat, and his wife Lisa Seagroat, who was Operations Director, quit last week. In a statement, Jerry Gilbert, the chairman of Age UK Enfield, said, "We can confirm that the Chief Executive and Operations Director have resigned from the organisation. We're grateful to both of them for the many years of service they've provided to Age UK Enfield. However, it would not be appropriate to say anything further at this point, as there are confidential HR and legal matters requiring us to protect the privacy of the individuals concerned. The trustees are now planning how the charity continues to work with and for older people in the area." Mr. Gilbert said anyone with concerns should contact Age UK Enfield on 020 8375 4125. That's 020 8375 4125.
This is a letter from Javeed Khan, Chief Executive of Barnardo's. He writes, "Barnardo's is supporting calls for the government to admit 3,000 more unaccompanied refugee children to the UK. But without the right help, many of these children could find themselves alone, homeless, and battling mental health issues. Many unaccompanied children will have been severely traumatised by the effects of war, having witnessed things we can't even imagine. These children need and deserve a decent place to live with the right people and support in place for as long as they need it. Specialist staff must be put in place to immediately identify the type of support these children need, including trauma or mental health support. These specialists then need to ensure that children stay in sensitive, loving foster homes while they live in the country, and that each foster carer is specially trained to nurture them. Shockingly, many unaccompanied children end up staying in inappropriate placements and accommodation with little help. As a result, 2/3 go missing from care, putting them in danger from traffickers or predatory adults. Effective support now will prevent greater problems in the future.
Council chiefs were expected to give the green light this week to plans that will transform a section of green lanes into a cycle-friendly route. Enfield Council's Cabinet is expected to consider the modified Cycle Enfield plans at a meeting in the Civic Centre at Silver Street. A group of residents who back the plans are gearing up for an organised bike ride to the Civic Centre in a show of public support to the council, which is keen to plough ahead with the scheme despite opposition from traders and retailers who fear a loss of car parking spaces in Palmer's Green will result in a fall of trade in the High Street. A report prepared for Cabinet members ahead of tonight's meeting calls for councillors to approve spending the next tranche of money from Transport for London, amounting to almost £6 million, on detailed design, further consultation and implementation of the plans. One of the chief concerns of those opposed to any implementation of the scheme has been the fear that emergency service vehicles will have their response times delayed by the segregated cycle lane. But the report reveals that on November the 18th, 2015, officers met London Fire Brigade to discuss the proposals and the impact on response times. And the report states, LFB did not raise any concerns at the meeting or via the consultation. Despite repeated attempts, the London Ambulance Service have not so far engaged in the design process, although there will be a further opportunity for any comments to be considered as part of the statutory consultation process. Just days before the plans are expected to get the official go-ahead, Helen Osman, one of the organisers of the Save Our Green Lanes group, which is opposed to the scheme, released a written response to the economic impact assessment carried out by independent company Regeneris. She states, "It's recognised that Regeneris has been brought in at the 11th hour, without time to conduct the detailed audit which should form the basis of any economic risk analysis. This research is formulaic, a top-down analysis, primarily designed for town centres."
The council has announced new anti-flooding measures as Storm Imogen struck this week. Work on the £15.3 million Salmon Brook flood alleviation scheme, which aims to prevent Edmonton being flooded, has now finished, and it is hoped this will protect 2,587 homes at risk. Enfield Council says it will publish its local flood risk strategy next month.
The heartbroken parents of a teenager found dead in the River Thames say the police's handling of the case was diabolical. Krishna Chuman of Nelson Road, Edmonton, was found on October the 9th, 2 months after he was reported missing in August. Krishna's body lay in the morgue for 11 weeks, during which time police issued a missing persons report. But his parents, Chandrasen and Mehta, were not told about their son's death until December the 26th, and now want to know why so many catastrophic failures took place. The 19-year-old straight-A student had been upset and angry the night he disappeared on August the 7th, but went off to play football with his friends. When he didn't return, his worried parents, who were packing to take their other son, Calvin, 12, back to school in Mauritius, decided to file a missing persons report. But when the police arrived to take statements, one officer joked he'd probably be too big to fit inside that suitcase. What followed, said the couple, was an agonizing few months without any news of what had happened to their son. They claim police did not keep them informed, and friends gave up their weekends to drive around London to see if he was living on the streets. When Krishna's body was pulled out of the Thames on October the 9th, police said it was impossible to identify him, even though they had already taken his toothbrush away for DNA evidence. Meanwhile, on November the 11th, detectives issued a missing persons appeal, one that proved futile. Mr. Chuman, 51, said, "I feel as though we were just another case on the shelf. Nobody cared about us, the police didn't seem to want to know or take us seriously. It felt like it's because we're an ethnic minority." Mr. Chuman had asked police to tell him of any developments in their son's case before his wife, who is weak after a stroke, so he could break any news to her gently. But on Boxing Day, the family were preparing to have a low-key lunch with friends when the doorbell rang. They were stunned to find two policemen on their doorstep, who, they claimed, charged into their home and simply told them that they'd found a body they thought was Krishna's. Mr. Chuman said it was like they were delivering a parcel. There was no sensitivity there. My wife started to cry. She became hysterical. I was in shock. We were expecting the worst, but we never lost hope. Nothing ever prepares you for something as bad as that. Until you lose a child, you can't imagine that kind of pain. My boy, he's innocent. He didn't deserve that. The couple are now calling for an independent inquiry into what happened and have approached the Independent Police Complaints Commission.
Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons have earned their place in pop's firmament. A string of smash hits and number ones including Sherry, Walk Like a Man and Big Girls Don't Cry has made them one of the most successful bands of all time. A spectacular new tribute musical show, Let's Hang On, at Williams Theatre in Darks Lane Potter's Bar on Saturday, takes you on a musical journey charting their remarkable rise to stardom. Their insanely catchy hits, many recorded at the height of their fame in the 1960s and 70s, featuring tight falsetto vocals and doo-wop harmonies, have become a soundtrack to the lives of generations. This award-winning production tells the story of how four New Jersey boys from the wrong side of the tracks invented their own unique sound, selling more than 100 million records worldwide. And you'll be amazed at just how prolific they were at producing chart-topping hits. Even 1970s tartan teen sensations, the Bay City Rollers, owe them a debt of gratitude, having wrapped up their biggest-selling number one with a cover of Bye Bye Baby. Add to that the theme song to Grease, the biggest-grossing musical film of all time, which Frankie Valli sang. Let's Hang On features classic early material and sensational a cappella singing. The show is guaranteed to get the audience dancing in the aisles.
Continuing with the local music scene, the band Murphy's Law are bringing their unique mix of folk rock to Enfield on Saturday evening when they perform at the Black Barn in the surroundings of Forty Hall. Every second Saturday in the month, the venue in Forty Hills stages concerts for established and up-and-coming bands. And this five-piece band are seasoned entertainers, having played thousands of gigs in the UK and Europe, including Glastonbury Festival numerous times. They've also released several albums. The band describe their music as a mix of genres and styles, predominantly based around rock, with hints of Americana rock, country, blues and ska. Billy Saggers, who formed the band in 1997, jokingly described what the crowd can expect from the band's energetic live performance. A late start, followed by a late finish, and madness, mayhem, and musical mosaic in between. The show starts at 8 o'clock in the evening and finishes at 11. Tickets cost £5, and there's a licensed bar run by the Old Bell pub in Baker Street, Enfield.
More from the local art scene with an interview with new writer Jamila Shamrook. Growing up with wildly differing parents, her mother a free-spirited Brit and her father a devout Muslim, Jamila Shamrock often found herself pulled between two ideologies. Her maternal family nurtured her artistic side, encouraging her to take to the stage from the age of 5 and go to festivals, while her paternal family from Palestine instilled in her a deep respect for the beliefs of Islam. I have lived half my life with my mum, who allows me to do what I want, and half with my dad, who has his restrictions, explains Shamila. So in terms of temptation, I've been around it all and done everything, but then rooted inside me, I still have my Islamic beliefs. When the former Hazelwood primary school pupil fell pregnant at 16 after leaving Broomfield School, not only did it put a pause on her plans to study drama, but it also tested her relationship with her family. It was definitely a surprise, says the 25-year-old, who is part of Chicken Shed's emerging writers season, Right Here, Right Now. But I was really determined to keep him, even though everyone said it was not the best thing for me. She adds, my dad didn't talk to me for the whole of my pregnancy, and it took us a long time to get back in contact because of the whole family shame thing, so I was affected by that. But at the same time, I understand because I've been brought up in that environment, so while I was hurt, I didn't hold it against him because I knew that would be the reaction. The various strands of influence in her life converged into a spark of inspiration after a trip to Palestine for her cousin's wedding, when she heard stories of girls paying to have their virginity replaced ahead of their weddings. It's a totally different life out there. Everything is sort of put in place for you, and the girls are happy and want to get married and have children, but at the same time you have the thing of family shame and honour, which is a lot stronger than over here. There, no one could ever find out you'd done something like that. Returning home, Jamila penned a play, It Happens, based around a young English Muslim woman who wants to be the perfect Muslim, but finds herself experimenting to try and fit in with her friends. It's not biased or anti how Muslims are brought up, explains the Tottenham mum who starred in As the Mother of a Brown Boy at Chicken Shed last year. It shows the beauty of Islam, but also that we're all human and all make mistakes and all give in to temptation, and young girls, whether they are Muslim or not, still feel the same things and the same peer pressures. Although the play is not autobiographical, Jamila says it draws strongly on her own experiences. When I was younger, I found it hard, because as a teenager, you must want to do everything and let loose. My dad would be saying no, and my mum would be saying yes, and fighting against what my dad would say, and I was split between the two. After having her son, Jamila reconciled with her dad and joined Chicken Shed aged 17 to do a BTEC and then a foundation degree, before joining the first year of its BA Hons degree. She graduated 3 years ago and now works for the theatre company teaching other young people. And she now appreciates both sides of a family equally. I have always been into performing, and growing up in Palmer's Green and Tottenham watched shows at Fox Theatre and was part of Hopeful Monsters. My mum is an artist, my great-grandmother was a singer, and my nan liked to dance, so I think it is probably in the blood. She adds, my dad and family are really religious, but when they speak to me about certain things, they don't do it in a pushy way. You sort of understand, and are told stories about the Quran, and you see the beauty of their life. She wants her play to give people an insight into both sides. I hope people take away an understanding of the normality of being a Muslim. We all go through the same things. And
Well, we've reached the end of our programme for this week. Don't forget your reader's representative, Diane de Jersey, is on 020-8805-6578 if you need any help with the talking newspaper. Please remember to turn over the address label in your postal packet, put the cassette or memory stick into the packet and return it to us as soon as possible in readiness for the next edition. The Enfield Talking newspaper will be with you again in 1 week's time. Thanks for being with us. From me, Malcolm, Elizabeth, Patricia, Darren and Jason, goodbye. Bye.